Afternoon, everybody. Happy Thursday. Normally, streams happen on Friday, but I'm going to be out of the office this week. So I wanted to do the weekly stream a day earlier so that we don't miss a week. So my name is Nate. I am the marketing and community lead for Laterpress, and we're going to be continuing our series on working with Laterpress AI story tools and creating a book using them. Book we're working on is a urban fantasy rom-com featuring two characters who meet through a magical dating app. Their date goes terribly wrong, and then they find themselves trapped in a time loop, having to do the date over and over again and different activities and variations on the date until they come to the app's conclusion that they are meant for each other. The app kind of takes the role of a pseudo antagonist, but its assessment is correct. They really are meant for each other. And the story is kind of a comedic journey of them getting over their own, personal baggage to realize that. So, in prior episodes of this series, we have gone through the process of creating a plot outline, which is going to be subject to further revision as we go. And we made scene cards for the first couple chapters. And I'm finding a sneeze. Excuse me. And so now, in last week's episode, we read through chapter 1, and I started showing kind of how I audit the text for what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and I kind of explained for the things I don't like, what I didn't like about them, how I would change things, because I don't encourage anyone to just take raw AI output and run with that as the story. I say treat it as a rough draft, treat it as a starting point. It gets you to a rough draft faster, but then it is your job as the storyteller to punch it up and make it your own from there. So we're into chapter 2 here, and in earlier episodes I did start to do a read through of this, but what I wanted to do here, start by reviewing the scene card, and then we're going to go through the chapter and mark it up with notes on where I think things need to be edited, and then circle back to the beginning and start doing the revision process. And this process is going to go slower than it normally would on my own because I'm not just auditing it and changing things. I'm taking the time to read it with everybody and explain my thought processes on why I don't like things and why I would change things so that you can get a kind of a deeper view into that. My average working with the story tools is to go from a scene card to a finished draft of a chapter in 60 to 90 minutes, but that has not been my experience with doing things on stream because I'm trying to do more than just work on the project. So also, this is not how our screen normally looks. I have it, this is 100%, this is the normal view, but when I'm streaming, I zoom in to fill as much of the screen real estate as possible. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to even go full page here so that the text is as large on your screen as you're viewing this as possible. So, chapter 2, Eddie meets his friend Dev at a noisy, ward-lit bar in Horizon's downtown entertainment district, a place where minor enchantment keeps drinks at perfect temperature and the ambient noise adjusts itself so conversations stay private. Dev is already 2 drinks in and radiating the evangelical energy of a recent convert. He matched on Cupid 6 months ago, is now deliriously happy with his partner, and has made it his personal mission to get Eddie on the app. Eddie's skeptical from the jump. When Dev mentions the $5,000 sign-up fee, Eddie nearly chokes on his drink, listing several things he could do with that $5,000 instead. Dev counters that Eddie spends all his time helping dead people find closure and 0 time finding his own, which lands harder than Eddie wants to admit. Eddie pushes back on the app's intensive screening process. He's heard rumors about the background checks, the psychological profiling, the invasive compatibility interviews, and says he doesn't love the idea of a corporate algorithm deciding who he should be with. Dev, grinning, says that's exactly what someone who's afraid of being known would say. Eddie bristles, then laughs, then gets quiet in a way that tells us Dev hit a nerve. Dev leans and delivers his closing argument. Eddie's work proves every single day that people's biggest regret is waiting too long to go after what matters. So why is he the exception? Eddie stares at his drink, thinks about Adeline and her unsent letters. Finally says he'll look into it. Not a yes, but not a no. And Dev knows him well enough to recognize that as a win. Dev immediately orders celebratory shots. Eddie rolls his eyes but doesn't stop him. So that is the overview of what's going to happen here. Now, starting from the beginning, the bar was called Glimmer. I should notice too that I already did do a small amount of marking up on this chapter from prior scenes, but we're going to start from the beginning and I'm going to go through everything again. So the bar was called Glimmer, which Eddie thought was a stupid name for a place that looked like the inside of a copper pipe. Ward light ran along the ceiling in lazy amber veins, pulsing faintly whenever someone at the far end got too loud, the enchantment dampening the noise before it could bleed into neighboring conversations. It was the kind of place that charged $14 for a cocktail and then kept it at the exact right temperature until you finished it, which Eddie had to admit was worth at least $6 of those dollars. You know what? I have a large part of this paragraph marked up. Here, stupid name for a place that looked like the inside of a copper pipe. This just felt like a bland and generic description to me. Like, I think we can punch that up and come up with something more creative. Ward light doesn't mean anything. It doesn't do anything for me visually as a term. So that's another area where I would try to come up with a different term there, describe things in a better, more interesting way. And then I underlined this part here, the enchantment dampening the noise before it could bleed into neighboring conversations. Nothing wrong with that per se. I just think this whole sentence is too long and that needs to be broken up. We need to have ward light and noise dampening enchantments be two different sentences, two different ideas. And then it was the kind of place that charged $14 for a cocktail. And then this is just like, I don't hate the image of mentioning that the cocktails are expensive, but there's benefits. But that's not at all how I would phrase that. So I could keep the spirit of the idea, but that is something I would want to change. Continuing on, Dev is already at their usual booth, 2 empty glasses, sweating rings on the table, and a third halfway gone. He spotted Eddie before Eddie spotted him, which meant he was already waving with both hands like a man flagging down a rescue helicopter. I think I would highlight that as well as, can we make that more specific to Dev's character? This part, 2 glass sweating rings on the table and a third halfway gone. I might tweak that a little bit. I like the detail that makes clear we're already walking up to our friend who is several drinks ahead of us and is definitely going to be feeling good. So I want to absolutely keep that. Just, I might get rid of the 2 empty glass. I might get rid of the sweating rings onto the table part and just leave it as 2 empty glasses on a third halfway gone. Especially because if those are empty, are they really sweating anymore? So, as a matter of fact, I'm going to just get rid of all of that right now. Leave it as 2 empty glasses and a third halfway gone. Maybe tweak that a little bit more. Maybe leave that alone. There he is, the ghost whisperer, the specter inspector, the please stop, phantom therapist. I'm a regret consultant. Eddie dropped into the booth and shrugged off his jacket. Something clinked in the inner pocket, a small brass compass he used for ectoplasmic readings, which he'd forgotten to leave at home. I believe I highlighted that in the past because I was debating if that is a necessary detail, or if we trim that for faster pacing, or if I replace that with some other detail that kind of works with his character. But I flagged that as a possible space for trimming. Eddie says, you've had too much to drink. I've had exactly the right amount to drink. Okay. And here is, I'm going to highlight that again. That is another AIism, which I know I highlighted towards the end of the chapter as well, that AI, when writing dialogue, has a propensity towards call and response that is very close to each other, repeating each other. You say the thing, then I say the thing back. I call that Marvel Cinematic Universe dialogue. It's been too long since I've watched a Marvel movie to know if they actually do that. But when I think of annoying dialogue that is trying too hard to be pithy, I think Marvel movies. So we're calling that Marvel dialogue. So I would tweak probably the back half, this back half. Instead of, and you've had too much to drink, you might say, I'm just getting started, or I'm doing fine, thanks, or, it's something. But for now, we're just auditing, and then we'll make the changes. Dev pushed a menu across the table. I ordered you the smoked old fashioned, the one with the little fog cloud. I don't want the one with the little fog cloud. There it is again. You say the thing, I'm going to repeat the thing. Too late, it's coming. Eddie leaned back and let the war light settle around them. The enchantment was doing its thing. The couple arguing 3 booths over had been reduced to a pleasant murmur, and the bass from the live music upstairs registered as a gentle vibration in the table rather than a headache. Gentle vibrations, I would want to do something that's more like an earthquake metaphor or something, I think, than a headache. Dev looked good, annoyingly good. 6 months ago, the guy had been subsisting on microwave burritos and doom-scrolling apartment listings after his lease fell through. Now he was wearing a shirt with actual buttons, his beard was trimmed into something intentional, and he had the specific glow of a person who was getting regular sleep and consistent affection. So I think the reason I highlighted this was I don't hate the imagery of someone who's turned their life around. And honestly, I do genuinely like subsisting on microwaving burritos. But I think this is an example of, I would keep the core spirit of what it's saying here, but I think I can amp it up and do better, which is why I highlighted that. Eddie knew that glow. He saw it on the living relatives of his clients, the ones who'd gotten closure in time. Eddie works with the dead, so well, it does say living relatives. Yeah, this just felt awkward with me to what Eddie does. So I would need to rephrase that. He never quite managed to generate it himself. So, Dev said, leaning forward with the posture of a man about to deliver his pitch, I want to talk to you about something. Actually, that's exactly what he's going to do. So I might want to make that something not as on the nose. I want to talk to you about something. No, you don't even know what it is yet. You've got the face you had when you tried to get me into CrossFit, and the face you had when you tried to get me to invest in that enchanted meal prep service. Fresh Hex was ahead of its time. It gave people hives, Dev. Minor hives, and this is different. This one is actually, I think, okay. Because I've already complained about it's saying things back and forth, but here is a complaint, and minor hives is qualifying the complaint, so it's not exactly redundant. That one I would let through. I would, call the others, but this one I would let through. So he gave people hives, Dev, minor hives, and this is different. Dev planted both palms on the table. This is about Cupid. Eddie picked up the menu, even though he already knew what he was ordering. Pass. You haven't heard? I've heard plenty. Magical dating app, Aphrodite's pet project. Matches people with what, 90-something% success rate? 93% of matches result in long-term partnership or marriage. I might actually make that higher, but for now we'll leave it. 93%. Good. Great for them. Good for me. Claude puts in asterisks under words that I think it should italicize. So that's just that's a formatting thing I'd clean up as I go. Dev sat back and spread his hands, presenting himself as evidence. 6 months. 6 months, and I'm happier than I've been in, I don't know, years. This 100% cannot be. Kai is. He stopped, and something genuine moved across his face, something that wasn't performance or salesmanship. Kai is the best person I've ever met, and I never would have found them without the app. So this is personal. This is a personal preference here. Nothing technically wrong with this, just not necessarily the direction I wanted to take. The AI named Dev's partner Kai and made them non-binary. So I'm acknowledging that. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, but that may not be what I want to do with the story. I have also not decided if either of those characters are actually going to show up in the book or only be referenced. So for now, it doesn't matter, but I am highlighting it as a potential thing where it's, do I want to keep that? Do I want to change that? The name is the thing I am most likely to change. Just because I know Kai's from other stories and I kind of want to do something different. Anyway, the server arrived with Eddie's old fashioned. A tiny cloud of aromatic smoke hovered above the glass. Curling in on itself like a lazy ghost, Eddie watched it dissipate. I'm happy for you, he said, and meant it. That doesn't mean it's for me. It's exactly for you. It's the most for you. You're the most for you person I know. What does that even mean? It means you're 31, you're single, you spend 60 hours a week helping dead people match their feelings or process their feelings. And the last date you had was when? March? February. 4 months ago. And how did that end? So this was me not liking the dialogue. Also, this specific part here. You're 31, you're single, you spend 60 hours a week helping dead people process their feelings. I call that soap opera dialogue, which is when a character is telling another character something that they both know that they know, in a way that feels unrealistic. And the reason that they are doing it is for the benefit of the audience. And I call that soap opera dialogue because in soap operas, there's like an episode a day and the story just goes on and on and on without repeats. So they have to put in this expositional dialogue to help bring the audience up to speed on things that they may have missed. So that's kind of why it's there. And I don't think that's good in fiction. I think there's other ways to make your point. So I call out that soap opera dialogue when I see it. You don't want it. You don't need it. You can do better. But now we're establishing that Eddie hasn't, or Eddie, Eddie, my brain, has not had a date in a while. So he takes a sip of his drink. The enchantment held it at the precise temperature where the smoke and the bourbon and the bitters all hit at once. Damn it, it was good. I think we can just go, damn, it was good. She said I was a lot. She said you were emotionally accelerated, which is a phrase I had to look up. Same thing. My point, Dev said, jamming a finger at him, is that you need help. Professional, magical, divinely backed help. And Cupid is that help. How much? Dev took a long sip from his drink. Dev, how much is the sign-up fee? It's an investment. How much? $5,000. Okay. We're kind of beating a dead horse to get to that point. I think that some character thought process can be, and some inner monologue can happen in here. All right, it's $5,000. Eddie choked, not dramatically. He wasn't a dramatic person, despite what his client's family sometimes said, but genuinely, bourbon hitting the back of his throat wrong, eyes watering, the little smoke clouds coughed into his fist. Yeah, I don't love that either. We just go Eddie choked 5,000 before you, 5,000, and then again repetition. Eddie set the glass down and started counting on his fingers. For $5,000, I could have replaced my entire ward system. Again, that's magical gibberish to me. I could buy that spectral resonance kit I've been eyeing for 8 months. Spectral gibberish. I could put a down payment on my office that doesn't share. I could put a down payment on an office that doesn't share a wall with a guy who breeds enchanted ferrets. The ferrets are not that loud. They scream, Dev. Again, bouncy dialogue. I'm actually marking this chapter up more than the first one. They scream in harmonic frequencies. $5,000. How many times have we said $5,000? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times. Yeah, that's excessive. $5,000, Dev said with the calm of a man who had already spent the money and come out the other side, is what you'd pay for a year of bad dates, mediocre dinners, and the slow erosion of your will to live. Cupid skips all of that. And the slow erosion of your will to live is a line I like. That's pretty good. Or I just keep the $5,000 and also skip all of that. Dev's expression shifted. The evangelical energy dimmed, replaced by something quieter and more precise. Eddie recognized it. It was the look Dev got when he was about to say something true, which he did rarely and always at the worst possible moment. Gonna let that stand for now, but I might come back and tweak that. Eddie, you spend every single day helping dead people find closure. You sit with ghosts who are stuck because they didn't say the thing or didn't go after the person or waited too long. That's your whole life. That's what you're good at. He paused. When's the last time you spent any of that energy on yourself? We're dropping truth bombs. Here again, I hate word light. The couple 3 booths over had stopped arguing. The bass drum from upstairs thumped once. This is callbacks to earlier descriptions. Eddie looked at his drink. That's different, he said. How? It's my job. I'm good at my job. You're incredible at your job. Again, redundant dialogue. You're also completely alone, and you've been completely alone for as long as I've known you, and every time someone gets close enough to matter, you either sprint at them so hard they run away, or you convince yourself you don't have the time. Dev's voice was gentle, which made it worse. I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm trying to be your friend. Eddie turned the glass in his hands. The enchantment kept the condensation from dripping, which meant there was nothing to fidget with, which meant he had to just sit there and feel the thing Dev had said land in his chest like a stone in still water. Don't like the metaphors. Don't like the fidgeting with the glass. Different descriptions there. The screening process, he said, because deflection was a skill he'd honed to a razor's edge. I feel like that sentence comes to an awkward ending. I've heard it's insane. I might just... Actually, this would work if I just go... Turn that into one block. The screening process. I've heard it's insane. Background checks, psychological profiling, compatibility interviews that last hours. 2 hours. Mine was 2 hours. 2 hours. You seeing the pattern? This is a tell of AI writing. If you leave those in there a lot, it can be done, but it needs to be done judiciously. 2 hours of some Aphrodite Inc. employee picking through your psyche like a yard sale. Don't actually hate that, but that can be made even more vivid. Her name was Cleo, and she was lovely. I don't love the idea of a corporate algorithm deciding who I should be with. Some app backed by a literal goddess who thinks she knows better than... again, doubling down on dialogue. Some app backed by a literal goddess who thinks she knows better than she does know better. That's the whole point. She's the goddess of love, Eddie. It's not an opinion, it's her domain. And that doesn't creep you out even a little, handing over your entire romantic future to a company that has 93% success rate, that matched me with the love of my life? Dev grinned, wide and knowing and infuriating. You know what you sound like right now? Don't. You sound like someone who is afraid of being known. Eddie's jaw tightened. He felt the retort form, something sharp, something decisive or dismissive, something that would redirect the conversation back to safe ground. It was right there, loaded and ready. Instead, he laughed. He felt the retort form. Instead of saying that he has a retort there, I might actually write the retort, in his thoughts, and then have him choke down on it. Instead, he laughed, short, surprised, almost involuntary, because Dev was right, and they both knew it. And the thing worse than your best friend seeing through you is your best friend being kind about it. Hey, Samuel, welcome in. Glad to have you here. I am working through chapter 2 at the moment, reading through it, highlighting things, and then we'll get to the beginning with the last half hour and start trying to fix it up as much as we can in an hour today. So instead, he laughed, short, surprised, almost involuntary, because Dev was right and they both knew it. And the only thing worse than your best friend seeing through you was your best friend being kind about it. I don't know why your best friend being kind about it is a bad thing. I would probably take that in a different direction. When the laugh then the laugh faded, and then he got quiet. The ward light. I hate the term ward light, so we're going to remember to change those. Hummed. Someone at the bar ordered something that arrived in a glass shaped like a crescent moon. The live music upstairs shifted to something slower, and the vibration at the table softened into a murmur. So it has picked a couple details that it wants to latch onto and that it keeps calling back to. And that is fine. But if we're going to keep calling back to specific details, we may want to have those be a little bit more punchy or distinctive or memorable. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with this, but I'm going to highlight that as a reminder that maybe I want to do something to change that. Dev watched him, waited. He was good at that, better than people gave him credit for. He knew when to push and when to just sit in silence and let Eddie's own brain do the work. Eddie thought about Adeline. She'd been sitting in his apartment that morning, translucent and stubborn, her hands folded in her lap in the way they must have been folded for decades. A woman who'd spent an entire life loving someone and never once found the words to say it plainly. 60 years of marriage, and she'd written letters she never sent. Poured her heart onto paper and then tucked the pages in a shoebox in the back of a closet, because saying it out loud, saying it where it could be heard and received and possibly rejected, was a bridge she could never make herself cross. And now she was dead, and the letters were still in the shoebox, and her husband was still alive, and Eddie had taken the case because that's what he did. He helped people who'd run out of time. So I'm underlining that. I'm not bolding it. It's entirely a in my own head thing. This specific detail is important and needs to be here. I might change the phrasing a little bit on it. The original generation of scene cards we had a chapter of Tessa in her office and then a chapter of Eddie in his office, and we would open seeing both protagonists going about their daily lives and showing their jobs. I kept the scene from Tessa. I deleted and decided not to do a chapter featuring Eddie because 2 office scenes felt redundant. I wanted our meeting with Eddie to show his character a little bit and advance the plot. So this section of text here that I've highlighted is a summary of what would have happened in that scene that I decided to not generate, not edit, just completely cut out. So those are details that need to stay in here because this accomplishes what that entire sequence would have for establishing his own character. Um, and the details are fundamentally good, but some of the phrasing I would change. I would punch up a little bit and maybe try to get into Eddie's head a little bit more. Because what I've noticed with AI generating chapters is it will give you the walkthrough of what happens, but it's not so great about inner monologue by default. That's something that needs to be, prompted for more specifically and tweaked, or that's kind of the area where you can insert yourself and your sense of the character into someone's into the thought process to elevate the material. The thing Dev wasn't saying, the thing Eddie could hear anyway, as loud as a bell in the ward damped quiet, have I mentioned I don't like ward whatevers, was that Eddie had watched 100 Adelins, 1,000, people who'd waited and waited and waited, who had let fear dress itself up as patience or practicality or timing. AI likes the rule of three: one, patience; two, practicality; three, timing. Um, and again, you can do this, but you see the pattern recognition when it's done too much. It's let's maybe trim one or two of those. They end up stuck between worlds with nothing but regret and a consultant who charged by the hour. We're just going to actually straight up delete that. He knew what waiting cost. He'd built a career on it. He knew what waiting cost. You help people every day who would give anything for more time, Dev said, low and steady, as if he could see the exact thought moving through Eddie's head. So why are you the exception? Why do you get to sit here and act like there's no rush? Eddie stared at the little smoke cloud reforming above his glass. The enchantment was persistent. No matter how many times he scattered it, it came back. I like this. I want to do more with it. I'm just going to write do more there. I'll look into it, Dev said. Or he said. Dev didn't move, didn't celebrate, just held A's gaze for a beat, reading the words for what they were: not a yes, not a commitment, but the door cracking open a quarter inch, which from Eddie was practically a declaration of intent. Yeah, I'm planning to, I don't think I'm going to do all of the work on this on stream. I think, doing multiple weeks of working on the same chapter would be dull from a viewer perspective, I think. So I might do one stream per chapter, starting on it, kind of walking through what I'm going to change, and then finish it off stream, and then maybe have like do a stream where we read through my punched up versions of the text. Um, I might want to copy the book too, uh, so that there's multiple editions of it, and that way I can show here's what it was initially, here's what I changed it to, and kind of do a side by side, a before and after to show the results. Uh, I'll look into. All right, I distracted myself. So I'll look into it. Eddie says, Dev didn't move, didn't celebrate. I'm just gonna kill that. I'll look into it. Yeah, I said I'll look into it. That's not a yes. That's not a no either. It's an I'll look into it. Redundant dialogue. Good point. Yeah, there's some delay, so I'm not always sure exactly what you're responding to. I think there's like 15, 16 seconds. I kind of have to guess sometimes. But yeah, I think showing before and afters would be good. Dev was already raising his hand to flag the server. 2 shots of whatever's good, the nice stuff, not the stuff that tastes like someone enchanted rubbing alcohol. I didn't say yes, Dev. You didn't say no, Eddie. That one, I think I would. That one, I think would stay. Because that one feels like the most natural, back and forth banter of the lot. The server appeared. Dev ordered with the confidence of a man who'd won a war of attrition and knew it. 2 shots of Olympus Reserve. We're celebrating. We're not celebrating. We're pre-celebrating. It's a thing. It's not a thing. Yeah, I highlighted that because again, it's the back and forth repeating dialogues. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the clarification. Yeah, that the back and forth. Yeah, we're gonna. As a matter of fact, I will show folks how we can do that once we get to the end of the chapter here. The shots arrived in glasses that glowed faintly gold at the base. Some minor enchantment that was probably decorative, but might have been doing something to the liquor that Eddie didn't want to think about at $14 a pour. So again, we're hitting on the drink. We're hitting on the drink cost, being redundant. Some minor enchantment that was probably decorative, like we're gesturing here. We're gesturing towards it's an enchantment that might be cool. It might be doing something. We don't know. Let's make it do something. Put a vivid detail in there. Be more specific. To Cupid, he said, to 93%. To my best friend finally getting out of his own way. Eddie looked at the glowing shot, looked at Dev, who was beaming like he'd personally brokered world peace, looked at his phone, dark and silent in his pocket, not yet downloaded, not yet committed to, not yet anything. 1, not yet downloaded. 2, not yet committed to. 3, not yet anything. Again, AI doing the rule of 3, which I am a fan of. Don't get me wrong. I think the rule of 3 is a good thing, but not to the degree to which it tends to be used in a rough draft. You got to pick those carefully. He thought about Adeline's letters, all those words written and hidden and never sent. He picked up the glass. To looking into it, he said, "That's all you're getting." I do like that as his non-committal attitude at this stage. We're going to have Eddie, signing up for Cupid very shortly after this, but let's not have him go all the way towards making that decision now. Dev clinked the glass against Eddie's with enough force to slosh liquid gold onto the table. That's all I need. Eddie rolled his eyes, tipped the shot back, and felt it burn all the way down, warm and bright and faintly sweet, like something that had been waiting to be opened. That is sticky, gross. I don't like that line. So let's zoom out here. And you see, scroll through, you can see I marked up a fair amount of the chapter. So but there's also a fair amount that we're keeping in here. And this makes it look like a lot more. I have made it look like it's a lot more work to fix than it really is, because I highlighted and explained everything that I didn't like about it, and explaining my rationale. So I did this here. I'm going to go back to my account. This is the very original version of the book. And then this is the copy I made. And I want to go up here and hit duplicate. So I'm making a copy of a copy. And now if we go into the settings here, you see it kept this because I added this number at the beginning. When a book is duplicated, it will keep the title and it will say copy at the end. That's by the default. So what I'm doing is I'm going to delete the word copy. I'm going to put 3 here, and I'm just going to save that. And there is no good way to, now we'll see, if I go into edit draft on the copy, and I go into chapter 2, it saved all of the formatting that I did. So it's an exact copy of everything that we've done to this point. But the reason the duplicate feature exists is so that if somebody is working on creating a book with AI assistance and you want to test the default prompts that we offer folks versus creating your own prompts to try to generate text, or test models, using one version of Claude versus ChatGPT and see how they go, then duplicating a book is an easy way to do that without having to delete work or port work out. You can have one version of the book once you've got all of the beats and scene cards set up to generate from Claude, and then the other book to generate, from ChatGPT. Just run different prompts, and you can see how the 2 versions of the book shake out if you want, and then, potentially create a third copy of the book and mix and match things. It's, how much work do you really want to put into combining all of that? But at a bare minimum, it allows you to easily do A/B testing of 2 different models against each other. So I think how I'm going to structure this going forward actually is I'm going to change the title on this one to settings. We're going to go edited. So this will be the copy. This will be the copy that where we make our edits. And I'm going to rename this one I'm just going to name that work in progress. So we'll do the initial cut here and the edited cut here. The only thing I'm going to need to do with these is that any changes to the beats and the scene cards and stuff, I'm going to need to duplicate that over here so that I'm editing from the same material and that part stays the same. But okay, so we've read through the chapter, we've marked things up. Now let's spend a little bit of time digging in and making some updates. I'll zoom this in so the text is nice and big on screen. The bar was called Glimmer, which Eddie thought was a stupid name for a place that looked like the inside of a copper pipe. All right, I'm not married to this, but let's change stupid to pretentious. That was a pretentious name for a place that looked like your average dive bar. Ward light ran along the ceiling in lazy amber veins, pulsing faintly when someone at the far end of the bar got too loud. I probably want to come up with something more creative than lights, but at the moment I don't have it. Lights ran along the ceiling in lazy amber veins, pulsing faintly whenever someone at the far end of the bar got too loud. All right, so let's change this. Lights ran along the ceiling in lazy amber veins, period. Whenever someone at the far end of the bar got too loud, enchantments dampened the noise before it could bleed into neighboring conversations. It was the kind of place that charged 14. All right, I'm going to unhighlight that. That's fixed. It was the kind of place that charged $14 for a cocktail and then kept it at the exact right temperature until you finished it, which Eddie had to admit was worth at least $6 of those dollars. So I'm leaving that text there as a reference, but then changing it before I delete the original. All right, I might tweak that some more. But that is my idea of keeping the spirit of the point without being as long about it. So it's a little more straightforward. They charge way too much for drinks, but at least enchantments kept them from warming to room temperature. Dev was already at their usual booth, 2 empty glasses, and a third halfway gone. Add a little flair there. Lording over 2 empty glasses with a third halfway gone. He spotted Eddie before Eddie spotted him, which meant he spotted Eddie before Eddie spotted him, which meant he was already waving with both hands like a man flagging down a rescue helicopter. Actually, I hate that last on reread, but actually, you know what? I'm keeping that. There he is, the ghost whisperer, the specter inspector, the please stop, phantom therapist. All right, so I think I'm going to get rid of this. Spectre inspector, he hiccuped. I need to look up the correct spelling of hiccuped. All right, so we're changing this. There he is, the ghost whisperer, the specter inspector. He hiccuped. Wow, try saying that 10 times fast. Because I think specter inspector is a tongue tripper waiting to happen. I'm a regret consultant. Eddie dropped onto the booth and shrugged off his jacket. Eddie doesn't need to clarify what his job is to one of his friends. He dropped into the booth and shrugged off his jacket. Something clinked in his inner pocket, a small brass compass used for... I'm going with that's an extraneous detail. Hiccup is 2 P's. Thank you. Fixed. All right, I'm getting rid of this as unnecessary detail. And I'm changing, and you've had too much to drink to, I see you got the party started without me. All right. Stiff neck. So I don't know that this would be the final dialogue, but that gets rid of the redundancy. Changing the dialogue to, I see you got this party started without me. The night is young, my friend. Dev pushed a menu across the table. I ordered you the smoked old-fashioned, the one with the little fog cloud. I don't want the one with the little fog cloud. Too late, it's coming. Okay, we're killing that. And Eddie does want the one with the little fog cloud. So instead of him complaining about it, I'm going to say, you know me so well. Okay, this is definitely not the final dialogue, but I want to give myself a direction on where I would go with this, because it's hard to kind of think and write at my peak while I have a camera on and I'm trying to keep things moving and try to be, somewhat entertaining at the same time. But the direction I want to take this is, instead of Eddie complaining about the drink, and having a little bit of repetitive, meaningless banter, let's change that to, he does want that drink because they've been friends for a long time and Dev knows exactly what he likes. So I want a dialogue exchange that that very quickly illustrates that friendship dynamic. Eddie leaned back and let the war light settle in around them. The enchantment was doing its thing. The couple 3 booths over had been reduced to... Actually, you know what? I'm going to delete all of that. And let's bring this paragraph up into this one. 20 years, bro. I live in your head. Dev looked good, annoyingly good. One of these 2 sentences need to... Dev looked like a man transformed. 6 months ago, the guy had been subsisting on microwave burritos and doom scrolling apartment listings after his lease fell through. I don't know that we need the second part. His doom scrolling, he'd been subsisting on microwave burritos. I do love that image. So that is staying. He'd been subsisting on microwave burritos. And something... so it is really hard to try to write creatively with a camera on. And something about poor hygiene or laundry. I want to double down on the image of him just being pathetic and unkempt and not taking good care of himself. So that is my note. Now he was wearing a shirt with actual buttons. His beard was trimmed to something intentional, and he had the specific glow of a person who's getting regular sleep and constant affection. Again, 3 items there. Shirt with buttons, beard is trimmed, and he had the specific glow of a person who was getting regular sleep and consistent affection. So I want to tie this back to here. Now he's wearing Actually, this I'm going to modify, but keep the idea that his clothing is improved because I want to make a comment about him like wearing ratty old clothes or not washing them enough. So I'm going to keep and work with that. Oops, turn off the caps lock. Since then, he'd shed at least 30 pounds. Trimmed his beard and was wearing a shirt with actual buttons. That's the part that I'm going to change. End the sentence there. He had the glow of a person who is getting regular sleep and consistent affection. We're going to get rid of regular sleep. And I might turn consistent affection into some kind of joke from Eddie's point of view. Like, here's a man who's getting laid, or, I don't know. But we're going to punch that up a little bit. I will reflect on it. Eddie knew that glow. He saw it in the living relatives of his clients, the ones who'd gotten closure in time. He'd never quite been able to generate it himself. This feels like a little bit of woe is me. I'm going to delete that. So, Dev said, leaning forward like the posture of a man about to deliver a pitch. Okay, I see how I'm going to change it. Leaning forward with in a manner Eddie had learned to dread. Nothing good ever came from that posture. I think that gives it a little more flavor. I want to talk to you about something. And again, a little in Eddie's head. Here we go. No, you don't know what it. You don't even know what it is. You've got that face. The face you had when you tried to get me into CrossFit. The face when you had when you tried to get me to invest in that enchanted meal prep service. I'm leaving these here. FreshX was ahead of this time. It gave people hives, Dev. I'm going to italicize that for emphasis. Minor hives. And this is different. Dev planted both palms on the table. This is about Cupid. And he picked up the menu even though he already knew what he was ordering. I know why it's there. It's a description to kind of break up the dialogue a little bit. Do we keep that? Actually, we do, but I'm going to change how it reads. Eddie made a show of scanning. No, made a show of looking over the menu, even though he would be ordering the fish and chips like he always did, and they both Okay, so this is going to get some changed, but this is at least gives me the direction I want to take this. Eddie made a show of looking over the menu, even though he would be ordering the fish and chips like he always did. He wanted a second to figure out how he'd talk Dev down this time. This specific sentence is the one that I think I'm going to rewrite and change again, but I want to put a little more of Eddie's thoughts in here as to like, he's like, oh my God, Dev is, evangelized so many times. I know where this is going. Here we go again. My friend has already had a couple beers, he's already into it. How do I get myself out of this? That's the kind of energy that I want in Eddie's head here. So that needs to be punched up a little bit more. I just missed that. You forgot to move with after forward. It's fine. Forward. Did I? Forward. Oh, leaning forward. Yep, you're right. There it is. Thank you. Fixed it. Thank you. Okay. So, okay. Back to here. Pass. You haven't heard. I've heard plenty. Magical. Okay, now see here's you haven't heard. I've heard plenty. So instead of repeating heard, I'll change that to I know what Cupid is, Dev. Magical dating app. Aphrodite's pet project. Matches people with what? 90 something percent success rate. 93% of matches result in long-term partnerships and marriage. Matches people with some absurd and unlikely to be legit success. All right, I'm highlighting that for myself too, because that's another thing where I can probably do that better, but that's the direction I want to go with it, because I don't want to repeat percentages in 2 paragraphs in a row. 93% of matches result in long-term partnerships and marriage. Dev said it the way people quoted scripture. Eddie, 93%. All right, I'm deleting the Eddie. I'm going to italicize that for emphasis. Good for them. Good for me. Again, italicizing for emphasis. And let's remove the bolds there. Oop. Remove the bolding. Dev sat back and spread his hands, presenting himself as evidence. 6 months. 6 months, and I'm happier than I've been in, I don't know, years. This 100%. I'm still undecided on these details. I don't know. I'm changing Kai. The name is not going to be Kai, but I'm gonna leave that as is for now. The server arrived with Eddie's old-fashioned. A tiny cloud of aromatic smoke hovered over the glass, curling in on itself like a lazy ghost. Blah, blah, blah. I'm happy for you, he said, and he meant it. That doesn't mean it's for me. It's exactly for you. It's the most for you're the most for you person I know. All right. We're over the hour, so I'm going to finish this last exchange of dialogue here. We'll tweak this up, and then we'll call that it for the stream. Kaylee, that sounds like a good name. K-A-I, Kylie. Actually, I like that. We're not. I'm going to do this in all caps so that I remember. I'm just going to edit the one for now and come back for that. So we're in wrap up here. And there's actually still enough to go here. I could do a second stream on chapter 2 if I wanted, but I think I might. I think next time we might need to workshop this beat and then generate some scenes and then do some other things to keep the momentum going. So like I said, it's much slower editing these when I'm taking the time to explain everything I'm doing. Okay, I'm happy for you. That doesn't mean it's for me. It's exactly for you. It's for you're the most for you person I know. What does that even mean? And then we had the soap opera dialogue explaining things. You're a good guy. You're a good guy, Eddie. But you don't put yourself out there. When was the last time you went out on a date? February. February 4 months ago. So I'm going to get rid of some repetition here. February, yes, comma, of. All right, I might tweak that some more, but the idea being to avoid the repetition of February, and I want to put a little more distance in there. So February, yes, last year. And how did that end? Eddie took a sip of his drink. The enchantment held it at the precise temperature where the smoke and bourbon would hit all the bitters at once. Damn, it was good. She said I was a lot. She said you were emotionally accelerated, which is a phrase I had to look up. And we're going to delete it. She said I was a lot. And she wasn't the first to say so, comma, was she? Dev jabbed a finger at him. You need help, professional, magical, divinely backed help, and Cupid is that help. How much? Dev took a long sip of his drink. Dev, how much is the sign-up fee? It's an investment. How much? $5,000. Eddie choked. Before you, $5,000. All right, we're going to delete that. All right, this will probably change too, but Dev squirmed in his chair, knowing the information he was about to impart would not be well received. I think this is wrong because that reads like head hopping. That we know what Dev is thinking. So call that a placeholder to kind of get me in the direction of what I intend. Eddie choked. Dev, He set his glass down and started counting his fingers. For $5,000, I could find and replace my entire ward system. Okay, and now we're getting into I need to replace some gibberish, and yeah, so we'll call it a stream. We'll call it a stream there. And I need to, actually, I'm going to note for self, Nate, this is where you stopped on stream, so that I can find it there easily later. Have a good bookmark for myself. And yeah, so we are making progress. The intent with these is to, show a lot of the process of creating a book using the story tools from beginning to end. And then when the book is finished, actually publish it and make it live so that people can not only watch these videos to see the process of how I made everything, but then read the full final book at their convenience. So that is kind of the goal that I am shooting towards with doing all of these streams. But that will probably be a ways down in the future because I want to show as much of the process as possible as a stream, get feedback, like Samuel, like what you've been leaving me here. I appreciate your comments. Those definitely help. So I do want to try to make it a little bit interactive, and I'm going to try to think through ways to make things more interactive as we go. But for now, that will wrap up the stream for the week, and I hope everybody has fun with the story tool.